did it. I told Wayne not to do this last week because it would be awkward. It's awkward, isn't it? Wonder who put that door. It was me. It's not a good door. Good morning. How are y'all doing? I want to tell you about the first 5 people I met when I got to college. I went to Ozark Christian College, just about an hour, west of here in Joplin, Missouri. I loaded up my new-to-me 1989 Mercury Grand Marquis. It was my grandpa's. I loved that car. The shocks were shot on it, so it bounced, kind of like when you hit the brakes. But you could fit so many friends in there. And so I was the designated Walmart driver, and we would all pile in and try to hit as many potholes as possible. It was fun. But when I first got there, I pulled up with this car just loaded with stuff. And if you know how big one of those cars is, there's a lot of stuff. The first 5 people I met at Ozark Christian College. The first guy I met, he walked out into the parking lot. He was a tall, very outgoing black student who I ended up being one of my RAs. His name was Phil. And he was very helpful, helping me carry stuff in. Grabbed the heaviest stuff first and was just right in. Little did I know he was getting paid to do it, but that's fine. Phil and I actually just, connected with Phil again on Facebook recently. He's out in Colorado as a children's minister. So that was Phil. Number 2 was Matt. Matt sat in his Dodge Ram pickup, revving his engine with his pipes growling. Apparently, I had stolen his parking spot and was unaware of it. We were both freshmen. There were no parking spots. But Matt was frustrated that he couldn't back his very loud truck in to unload it, okay? Matt was from Texas, if that means anything to you. I think it meant something to me pretty quickly. He was very brash and very upset with me that day. We actually ended up being roommates later down the road in college, and he was actually the best man in my wedding. So I don't know what that says about me as a person or about Matt. The third person I met was my roommate, Kylie, my first college roommate. Kylie was not wearing clothes when I met him, or many times after that throughout the semester. So Kylie didn't last very many semesters at Ozark, and I'm glad because I got a new roommate, and it was just, that's all I have to say about Kylie. He's the most interesting. I have plenty of stories, but we do not have time for Kylie stories. The fourth person I met was a guy named John, and he just wanted to hook our computers together so we could play Counter-Strike. He had all of this LAN cable, this is pre, just do it over the internet, but this was over the, cable internet. So we were running cables through the roof. Before I even had my clothes in the room, we were hooking our computers up so we could play Counter-Strike together. I don't know anything else about John from this point forward. I can assume the way that his life kind of turned out, just from his priorities on day 1 of Bible college. But the 5th person I met was my dorm dad. Dorm dad was, you may not know that term, but off the lobby of our dorm, which was also the only place where there was a payphone, and really the only place you could make an out-of-town call. But off of that lobby was a little apartment, and in that apartment, the dorm parents lived. And so you had a dorm mom, and a dorm dad. And our dorm dad was a very, very militant, very drill sergeant type of guy. He was also the soccer coach at some point for Ozark there, and just a kind of a tall, very black and white, very here's the rules, you're going to follow them type of guy. So in my first hour in a new place, I had moved from Houston, Missouri, which is a town of less than 2,000 people, to Joplin, which still isn't a huge town, but to me was metropolis. It's massive. And I go to this Bible college, which is 3 times the size of my high school, and I start meeting so many different types of people. I mean, in 1 hour, I've met a person of color, a Texan, a nudist, a gamer, and a soccer coach. These are all brand new things for me, okay? I think it was the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air that said, my life got flipped, turned upside down, okay? That was what happened to me day 1, hour 1. And college was filled with all different kinds of people. Some looked different, some acted different. But what I realized is that it was less about what they looked like and less about what they acted like and more about why they had come to Ozark Christian College. why they had come to school. And that kind of grouped us into these categories of majors. And you would notice the people who kind of had the same major would be kind of in the same areas. There were the people who came for sports. They came to Ozark to play sports. Now, Ozark doesn't have athletic scholarships or anything like that, but people came because they were good at sports. So they spent a lot of their time in the gym, whether it's lifting weights or playing in the gym or on the road playing other Christian colleges or playing their games. Some people wanted to teach. They wanted to go on to teach, to be professors. And so they had come to Ozark to study really hard and to get the degree. Some would stay there 4 or 5 years and get an advanced degree. They spent a lot of their time in the library. Many wanted to preach. Ozark is known as a school to train Christian men and women for service. And many wanted to preach, so they spent a lot of time in what is called the Don DeWelt Preaching Lab. It was in the basement of the library. A lot of memories down there from a lot of my classes. I was just talking to someone this morning who made me recall a memory from one of those classes where we would sit and watch our old sermons, like we would preach in class, and then we would sit and watch those sermons. And one thing that Matt Proctor, president of Ozark Christian College, who was my preaching teacher, he sat me down and we didn't even watch the sermon. He didn't want to talk about content. He just wanted to talk about how much I moved on stage. The camera guy's like, amen, right? And so we watched my message in fast forward on mute, and I watched myself go like this, and go like this, and go like this. Sorry, I'm not doing that. I'll stay here. But the Don DeWelt Preaching Lab in the basement of the library. Then there were the really, really strange people on campus, the music majors, the Corey Scotts of the world. Corey was a senior when I was a freshman. He did not help me move into the dorms. He was probably busy in the basement of the chapel. That sounds really like ominous, like a place where there's like catacombs and stuff. But there's practice rooms. He spent a lot of time in there. Every once in a while, you would see a music major emerge from the basement of the chapel with a guitar to just serenade girls on campus, right? That's pretty much the only time you'd see them. And then we'd have a musical like once a year and be like, that's where all those people are. Like, I've seen them before. But then there was this other group. There was this other group that stuck out in a different way. And at the time, they were called missions majors. Intercultural studies, I believe is what it's called now. They were prepping for the mission field. They wanted to go translate the Bible to reach unreached people groups and to really truly live out the Great Commission. And for some reason, that made them weird. And they all hung out together and they all looked at maps together, and they all dreamed and planned of mission organizations and translating and all of this together. They were different. In the 90s and 2000s, we called them unashamed or sold out or radical. Sold out spelt with a U, of course, sold out. And to borrow a line from the greatest Christian band of all time, DC Talk, they were the Jesus freaks, right? You know these people. But it wasn't just college that did this to me, to view missionaries and global outreach workers as this kind of different kind of breed of Christian. We kind of treat them like the homeschool kids of Christians, right? No offense. It was a little strange. Like there's something, I like it, but it's something. So, I'm sorry. It's John at northsidechristianchurch.net. They would... I realized that growing up, missionaries that would visit our church, they would come 2 or 3 times a year. We would always have a potluck dinner. It was Sunday night, a potluck dinner, no sermon. So I was like, all right, whatever. There was a slide projector that they would click through the slides. And we would watch the slides, and we would have dinner, and they would tell us about the work that they were doing with the money that we had sent them, and we would take up an offering, we'd give them some more money, and we'd go do a good job over there, okay? See you in a year. And so you kind of viewed them as this different type of breed, this different, like there's something different about a missionary or a global outreach worker or someone who wants to just give up everything and go and reach the lost for Christ. The people out there doing the work. For me, I'm sitting in a pew, I'm eating the potluck. I'm hoping they do a good job with the money I send. I feel like that's kind of the way I was brought up. We started this series last week called And realizing that it is possible that if you've been here for a while, or even if this is one of your first weeks at Northside, that when you hear our core values and our global outreach practices, that you might think that this is like a potluck dinner, where you kind of pick and choose a few different things. And we've got 4 core values and 4 practices of global outreach, and as long as you get about 50% of those, you're good to go. And so we started this series, and we started thinking that God wants all of us. He wants all of us, and he wants all of us. This is not a this or that. This is a this and that. The call of God in your life is not an either or a multiple choice question. It's an all of the above situation. And so last week, Wayne told us that how he said two of our practices, going and sending, that we are all in as a church, not only sending prayers, not only sending people and finances to reach the unreached people groups of the world, but if we're any kind of gospel-centered church, that we should be willing to immerse ourselves and to go into another culture for a couple weeks or a couple months or years or even a lifetime. I'll say it this way: without an elevated view towards global outreach, if the church doesn't elevate the view of global outreach, not to just take missionary people and elevate them, but if the church doesn't have an elevated view of global outreach, the church only leans inward. And a church that leads inward is not expanding, it's imploding. And that's a danger zone. From the very first call of Genesis, the call of Abraham, to go to the nations, that all of the nations of the world would be blessed through him, that they would know the one true God, all the way to the last words of Jesus on earth: go and make disciples. Global outreach or missions or whatever you want to call it, reaching the unreached people groups with the gospel, is not a call for some weird group of people over there that we're going to throw some money at, but it's a call for everyone. It was Nina Gunter, the former president of the Church of the Nazarene, says, if you take missions out of the Bible, you won't have anything left but the covers. Missiologist David Bosch wrote, if the church is in Christ, she is involved in mission. Her whole existence then has a missionary character. It's not go or send. It's not welcome or mobilize. It's like, maybe I'll do this. It's go and send. It's not missions people and non-missions music people. It's not missions people and non-missions preaching people. It's not this group of Christians and this group of Christians. It's all the same mission. And this morning, just like I unpacked that old car on my first day of college, I want to unpack our last 2 practices of global outreach. You can find these out on the global outreach wall, and we'll mention that many more times. This whole hallway down here, we actually call the Go Lobby, global outreach. And you can see the maps on the walls and the work that we support. And we're going to talk a lot more about that. But last week, Wayne talked about our commitment to going and sending. This week, I want to highlight our commitment to the practices of welcoming and mobilizing. So let's start with that first one, just a definition: the practice of welcoming. The practice of welcoming. The practice of welcoming is to intentionally engage unreached people who have migrated or traveled to our home communities. To intentionally reach those who have ended up here, no matter how they have ended up here. And we can quabble about politics and borders and that sort of stuff. Let's talk about the mission of the church. Since the beginning, when the Israelites were chosen as God's chosen people, the command to love the outsider has been there. If you go all the way back to Leviticus, when the laws were being given to Israel, Leviticus chapter 19, verse 33, don't take advantage of any stranger who lives in your land. You must treat the outsider as one of your native-born people, a full citizen. And you are to love them in the same way you love yourself. For remember, you were once strangers living in Egypt. You jump to Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy chapter 10, verse 18 says, he enforces his justice for the powerless, such as orphans and widows. He loves the foreigners, making sure they have food and clothing. You must love the foreigners living with you in the same way. Remember, how you were foreigners in the land of Egypt. You see how God is continuing to remind them. This is not their foreigners and you are not. You were once that as well. Over 40 times in the Old Testament, God tells his chosen nation to welcome the stranger, to welcome the foreigner, to welcome the immigrant, to welcome the sojourner. Not only to welcome them, but to treat them as one of their own. Jesus looked out for the left out. Even Jesus, when you get to his ministry, looking out for the left out, he constantly was found having conversations or healing people or engaging with people that the world ignored. Being a welcoming church means that we are opening our homes, that we are inviting in, that we are building friendships, hosting actively, and learning about cultures as they're learning about ours. Last week, Wayne talked about opening doors, that God had opened doors. And the reason that we're even here today is because God has opened a door from the other side, that God has opened a door to a man named Paul, who started to preach to the Gentiles and took the gospel to the Gentiles. And here we are today because of that. Paul chose to walk through that door. And so today, I want to kind of flip that. I can't move the door because it's screwed to the floor and tied and stuff, But I want you to think of it in reverse a little bit. So God has opened doors for the gospel to go to the places, to the unreached people groups. God has opened doors, and there is plenty of work to do. But there are also doors that we need to open. There are also doors that from our end, we need to open to the gospel. Because it's not only true that the nations need the gospel and we need to go to the nations to take them the gospel, but that the nations have also come to our shores. That the nations are also here. God has opened doors for people to walk through to reach unpeople. We also can open doors. Often we fall into the sin of the Israelites when the world comes to our doorstep. The Israelites have this beautiful temple and promised land that God had given. It's known all over the world. One of the natural wonders of the ancient world. One of the wonders of the ancient world. People came to see the temple because it was so amazing. Nations saw the beauty of God, and yet the Israelites time and time again would trip over themselves trying to get all nationalistic with it. They'd be like, oh, we're the chosen people. And they would mistreat those within their midst, completely ignoring the commands that God had just given them. Their punishment was exile to Babylon. It's essentially God saying, if you're not going to open the door when I bring the nations to your doorstep, I'm going to send you to the nations. And so they're exiled to Babylon. Their punishment was to spread the name of the one true God by being forced out of their promised land. Most of you probably have a door on your house, I hope. This one's for sale if you don't. And in front of that door, on your front porch, you might have a welcome mat. I noticed this week we have a welcome mat. Thanks, Bree, for doing that. I don't really use our front door. How many of you don't use your front door? We might have a front door. I might have a key to it, maybe. But I know I've left it unlocked a lot. I've been told that. So we have this welcome mat, and I looked at it this week, and it's one of those kind of standard, really scratchy, brown-looking welcome mats with some black cursive writing on it. And I looked at our welcome mat, and it said, "Love lives here." That's nice. There's a lot of other emotions that live in our house as well, but love is the one. If you knock on our door, you will see love lives here. We want you to know that first, okay? I don't know what you hear through the door, but love lives here. It's commonplace to have a welcome mat on your front door. But something has happened in architecture and culture in the past 20 years, especially the past 2 years, where we have doing a lot more stuff inside. We've stayed a little closer to our bubbles. But the welcome mat has become less of a welcoming thing and more of an interrogation station, right? I mean, we've got doorbell cameras and automatic locks, and so when someone comes and knocks on the door, it's terrifying, right? So you'd be like, I can't be FedEx, they don't knock on the door, right? It's probably a new Amazon guy, I'm not really sure. So as soon as he knocks on the door, first our dog barks, and I'm like, great, now they know somebody lives here, love lives here. And And so, like, everybody just freezes, It's like, get the kids, get on the floor. Like, we don't want, like, we're like crawling around. I don't know if I've told you this before, but I'm not allowed to answer the door because we buy things when I answer the door. And what I want to tell my wife is like, whenever we hear the door and we like freak out, he's like, if we had the security system that he's going to try to sell us, I would know that he was coming, right? So that's my logic anyway. And so we freak out. We're like, who could it be? Did you invite someone over? Why didn't you ask me? I'm not ready. I'm not wearing hard pants. I think that's what they call them, right? I'm in my sweats still. I'm not ready. I haven't showered, whatever. Like, we didn't know someone was coming over, so it becomes this whole back and forth. Should we answer the door? Should we open the door? How far away from the door are they standing? Did you order pizza? If you didn't order pizza, like it's different. Who's that? Who are they? Somewhere along the way, in the last few years, we've become a back porch culture. And it's not just COVID. It was before COVID. Just look at our neighborhoods. They're built that way. We have big fenced-in backyards and little bitty front porches. We have a little bench on our front porch, and I don't know if I've ever sat in it for more than like 5 minutes. They're like, it's hot out here. Why are all these people looking at me? I'm going to the backyard to get my privacy, right? We call it a privacy fence. That's why we build them. Our neighborhoods are built for it. Curb appeal in the front, party in the back. If you've ever walked past someone's house and you've heard them having a party in the back, you're like, I want to be their friends, right? You're like, you could walk past houses in our neighborhood and not know that people live there. Curb appeal in the front, party in the back. We build fences, we lock gates, we keep strays out, dogs and people. It doesn't make you an evil person to have a backyard. It's not some biblical command that we need to pretend like it's the 60s and you have to play baseball in your front yard every night. Like, that's not the point. But over the past 20 years, living out the mission of God, which comes not with a locked gate, but a welcome mat, has become harder because we're more insulated. People no longer accidentally meet on the sidewalk. We have 3 new sets of neighbors since the beginning of COVID. And I tell you, 2 of those couples I have never seen. I saw the move-in trucks, and I haven't seen them. And people don't wander into your living room. And if they do, that's real weird, right? And so that's not the answer. The answer isn't just to go see who leaves their front door unlocked, right? You can probably try my house first. It happens often. But it's not to wander into living rooms and backyards. People have to be invited in. They have to be welcoming. There was a statistic that came out a few years back, and it's fluctuated up and down. But in having some conversations with Shannon, who works at Christian Campus House with international students, and Missouri State is expecting a huge influx of international students this semester, because many of them couldn't come last semester, and many of them had to go home early the semester before. Some of them were locked down, but they're expecting to be back in full force with their international program. But the statistic has floated around that 90% of international students that come to American universities never see the inside of an American home. They didn't likely make it that far off of campus. I remember asking one of the international friends that I've met through the university programs, after a few times we had met, every time I would message him, like, where do you want to meet? And he would always pick a place on campus. He'd always pick a coffee shop just right across the street, or he'd always pick the student union or something like that. And I just asked him one day, I was like, man, Springfield's a pretty big place. I'd love to show you a little bit more of Springfield. Why do you never go off of campus? Have you never been off of campus? Well, he was like, I don't have a car. But what was most telling to me is what he said is that no one's ever invited me off of campus. He came with a group of international students from China. They were friends. They made friends as they got there. They live in a group of dorms, and they just know each other. And so no one had invited him. Missouri State University reports that there's at least 5% of their student population, which is an estimated 23,000 students, that 5% of them come from outside of the United States. Right here in the middle of Springfield, we have students from all over the world. The nations are here. And it's not just in our universities, it's in our communities. I don't know if you've noticed how many Chinese restaurants we have in Springfield. There's a few. If you do meet an international friend from China, don't take them to one of our restaurants unless they have a authentic menu, or you just really like getting made fun of. Because that happens to me all the time. It's like, do you like Panda Express? And they're like, okay. No one ever invited. These students come from China, Saudi Arabia, India, and in every case that I've seen over the course of 10 years now in ministry here, having probably about 10 international friends from all over the world, every single one has been open to talk and learn and listen. Some of them, their main goal when they show up is to learn English. And it's kind of terrifying that they would learn some English from me, but they just want to talk. And they'll talk anywhere. I remember taking one of my Chinese friends to Springfield Brewing Company downtown. And he said he wanted to try some real American food. And so I got him the buffalo mac and cheese. Highly recommend. They didn't pay me to say this. Just go eat it. It's amazing. The buffalo mac and cheese. And he said, this tastes like Chinese food. So I was like, no, this is Buffalo, New York. This is buffalo sauce. He's like, it tastes like cayenne pepper. Man, it tastes like pepper. It's the same thing. I was like, okay, maybe we're not as original, but he did think it was good. They're open to talk and to learn and to listen. There are programs at the university Bree and I have participated in for years. I encourage our college students to get involved. International Friends has a great website at Missouri State's website. You can just look at international.missourustate.edu, and you can scroll through all of the things that they have. You can register as a host to be a host for an international student, where they could come over to your house for dinner. You could also, students can register. You can see how there you can get more information. Super great opportunity that we have there. Christian Campus House is another one. You know, I mentioned Shannon. Shannon works there at Christian Campus House with international students specifically. And I was emailing with her this week. She said that more international students are expected to come back. And they've been involved in ministry for years. Conversation partners, setting up Bible studies, free rides to Walmart for groceries. Because a lot of these students don't come. They don't have a bike. They don't have a car. They don't know anybody. And so they give these free rides to Walmart, and they're starting that back up this year, actually. So if you are interested in helping drive, that's another way to connect, just driving to Walmart. You could check out their website, cchonthedot.net, to see, or you can see our Go Wall. Again, we've got information because we support Campus House regularly, join them on trips as well. For years, we've partnered with Christian Restoration Ministries in the Highfields, and many others have volunteered and partners to host small groups and Bible studies, Sunday school classes, and events for Chinese students. It's always such a joy to see them come into our church and to listen to the messages and to be a part of our church family. God has opened doors. God has opened doors, and the nations have come to our doorstep. The question is, will they find a welcome mat? Can you imagine? I mean, I told you about the first 5 people that I met when I got to school, which was a wild experience. But can you imagine if the first 5 people that an international student met wasn't just their professors or the people that they traveled with or their SOAR leaders at Missouri State where they give them tours of the campus, but it was God-fearing Christians who wanted to love them because they're in an unfamiliar place, and we heed the command of our God to welcome the stranger, to welcome the sojourner. They may only be here for a year. They may stay here for a lifetime. Many of my international students have moved on to Chicago or New York and have gotten jobs here permanently, and I still stay in contact with them. This approach, the question for us is will we have the welcome mat? We want to be a church that looks out for the left out and lives with the front porch approach, a kitchen table invitation, welcome mat mentality, an open door policy with our message. There's an organization in Piedras Negras, Mexico, just across the border from Eagle Pass, Texas. Many of you have been there with Crossroads Mission. They've been hosting Northside groups, medical trips, care trips, and I want to share with you a story. And this is a hot button in the news. I understand that and everything, and so you may come with some judgment or whatever in this. But Crossroads is doing exactly this. They're opening doors when people are coming to our borders. There's a lot to work out down there. It's a mess down there. But Crossroads has been there for years and years. They're welcoming those who have been in the most difficult situations. I want you to watch this story from Crossroads. It's about 3 minutes long on the screen.
Mi nombre es Mike, soy de Caracas, Venezuela. Estuve trabajando en las fuerzas militares de Venezuela. Por no acatar órdenes del dictador Nicolás Maduro, decidí retirarme de las fuerzas militares, a que me pedían utilizar la fuerza pronto decidí tomar el viaje hasta acá, hasta Piedras Negras, para enfrentarme a una solicitud de asilo a los Estados Unidos. El proceso es bastante largo, ya tengo aproximadamente casi un año cumplido de estar acá en México y estoy solicitando asilo político a los Estados Unidos bajo el programa MPP, el cual te regresan a México a esperar por un tiempo definido hasta que la Corte decida cuándo debe atenderte y si tu caso de asilo político será aprobado. Al llegar a Piedras Negras tuve la oportunidad de asistir a un comedor para migrantes y conocí a otros amigos que me brindaron también una buena oportunidad de conocer a los compañeros de Crossroads, quienes apoyan al comedor Mundo de Fe. Y pues de ahí tuve aproximadamente un mes y medio donde estuve conviviendo en el rancho con una buena cantidad de familiares, digamos que 3 o 4 familias que tuvimos en el rancho, y pues así logré entrar a conocer a todo lo que eran los misioneros aquí en Crossroads y la iglesia Betania. A lo largo del tiempo que he estado acá se han realizado algunas actividades para los grupos de migrantes, pero se ha logrado concentrar una mayor cantidad de venezolanos acá, y todo eso gracias a Crossroads, que ha logrado ser la unión, el punto de encuentro, el punto de amistad entre todos los que hemos logrado llegar hasta acá, porque no es nada fácil. Y a pesar de que hay una gran cantidad de migrantes venezolanos, también hay cubanos, salvadoreños, hondureños, inclusive nicaragüenses he conocido, y eso ha servido para la unificación de las culturas y de base en nuestro Señor Jesucristo. Luego, pues aquí nunca pensé en conseguirme la bendición de conseguir una iglesia y unos amigos que me abrazaron de una manera increíble y me hicieron sentir como si estuviese en casa. La experiencia que he tenido aquí ha sido maravillosa y pues aquí logré concretar, tomar la decisión de bautizarme, y eso ha sido un gran paso para mí. Mi nombre es Michael Willis Martínez Hernández y estoy aquí tocando mi fe pública, de aceptar a mi Señor Jesucristo como mi Salvador, mi único Rey. Me arrepiento de todos mis pecados y espero tener una nueva vida con este acto.
Amen. He said, cultures have come together and we've found hope in Jesus Christ. We're thankful for Crossroads Mission choosing to love, to welcome whoever comes to their door, to open doors. That's the church. That's global outreach, whether it's hopping on a plane and flying to the nations or the nations coming to you. The last practice of global outreach that we want to look at this morning is the practice of mobilizing. Here's the practice of mobilizing from our Global Outreach Handbook. The practice of mobilizing is working to cast vision for the world in such a way that other believers can see God's great story and find ways to be a part of it. You are practicing being mobilized right now. You don't know it. Maybe you did know it. But just hearing these stories, hearing the stories you're going to continue to hear, to visit our global outreach wall, to see that Northside is not existing to implode, but existing to expand. You're being mobilized. We talk about what we love. Being mobilized essentially just means that, mobilizing other people to love what you love. We do it with everything, okay? We could talk about CrossFitters. I don't want to do that, but Instant potters, anybody? Instant potheads? Is that what you guys, I don't know what you call yourselves. Instant potheads, I don't know. John at Northside Christian Church. The Essential Oils clan, right? You guys are here, okay? I've never done CrossFit with those other two that we have an Instant Pot. It's just a rice maker pretty much for us. We have oils in our house, but I'm not sure which ones to drink and which ones to get bugs away from. I'm not sure of all that. But I do have some things that I will mobilize. If you talk to me long enough, I'll mobilize. You want to talk about like my Subaru or my Nikes or my pellet grill, like my eyes are going to light up and I'm going to talk about those things. We talk about what we love. I'm going to try to mobilize you into the ways of charcoal grilling over propane, okay? Those sort of things. It's not a new thing. I mean, this is not even an anti-biblical thing. This is what Jesus meant when he told the Pharisees. He was looking at them, he goes, man, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. We all mobilize others to something. Out of the overflow of our mouths, our Facebook, our Twitter, our Instagram, we tell the world what's the most important thing in our lives. And it'll either drive people towards it or drive people away from it in how we spread that news. When Jesus gave the Great Commission, he said two very powerful things. One, it's a very powerful thing in general, but one was that all authority in heaven and on earth had been given to him. And so we're not doing this by our own power or personality or presence. It's not by just what we love. It's what he has commanded us to do. But also he says, therefore, and in Bible college they said if there's a therefore, what's the therefore? And so by his power, he says, therefore I send you. He gives us orders. He gives us a calling. He gives us a power to speak with his words, to go and to make disciples of all nations, to take the message now with his authority to the disciples. The disciples were mobilized. They heard this message. One message that would flow out of them was the love of Christ, the nations of the world. And so the question for the 21st century church is this: what is the world hearing from our mouths? What are we mobilizing people to? With our mouths, with our posts, with our tweets? Are we known for mobilized people around the call of Christ? Does the world know that we are Christians by our love, or is there another message flowing out of our hearts? It's not a new problem for Christians to take the call of God to the nations, to take the welcoming the nations, discipling the nations, going to the unreached. It's not a new thing for us to put that on the back burner in trade of looking at ourselves and internally thinking. In the 19th century, preacher A.T. Pierson said this. He said, Christians need to be converted to missions just as the lost do to Christ. I can almost guarantee you that weird group of missions majors that I met at Ozark, studying maps of unreached people groups, were mobilized by someone who introduced them to God's bigger plan in the world. Maybe it was a missionary who came with the slideshow. Maybe someone brought them on a mission trip or invited them or took them to a mission conference, shared a prayer chain story with them, invited them to pray for a missionary. Maybe just brought them to church and they heard a message like this. So I want to give you a couple ways that you can continue to be mobilized. Kind of in closing here. First, our Go lobby is full of information. It was designed. As a matter of fact, you could probably say that whole side of the church kind of took shape around the idea that we will have a prominent place in our new building, for missions, for global outreach. And so obviously this is here every single week in our worship center, but out in the Go lobby, you can see there's plenty of information about the ministries that we are involved in, the ministries that we support, from Christian Campus House to Pregnancy Care Center, laying out welcome mats right here in Springfield, from North Africa to India, where workers are taking the gospel to the ends of the earth and laying out welcome mats there. I encourage you to grab a brochure, grab a prayer card, or even just stop at the wall to see the pictures, to stop and say a quick prayer for our workers in the field. Second, I want to show you one more video. Caitlin and Brian Lamming are a young married couple who attend Northside, and through the teaching and inspiration they've received through Christian Campus House, being students there at Missouri State, but also attending Northside, they have been mobilized. Caitlin is getting ready to join a team of Bible translators that has huge goals for Bible translations. And as a matter of fact, that goal is to end Bible translation. Not to give up, but to finish the project. So that every tribe, tongue, and nation has a Bible translation in their language. I want you to take a look at this video. It's about 3 minutes long.
So tons of things get me excited about Bible translation, like everything about it does.
I think it was around 2013 and 2014 I started coming to Northside off and on. I went to Christian Campus House. Probably 2016 is when it finally solidified that Northside was my home church.
Brian introduced me to Northside as well as Campus House. And I came here one Sunday. It was like a random Sunday, September 2017. And there was a sermon series about dangerous prayers. And I think it was Corey Scott's dad preaching. And he literally started talking about something that I'd been praying about since that January, so like 9 months later. And so that was amazing. And I was like, wow, God must want me here. And then I had a conversation with Wayne, and that really solidified things. And so I also became a member in 2017. From a very young age as a kid, have loved culture, came to Missouri State and started doing international student ministry. What really solidified things was in summer of 2019, I did an internship with Pioneer Bible Translators. I was going on this internship to figure out if I wanted to use cultural anthropology for kingdom work or not. And the day before I left, the Lord asked me to put that on the altar. And thinking, okay, if I put something on the altar, God sends fire to burn the sacrifice, right? So I lose it. But I continued to just pursue him that summer and see that cultural anthropology could totally be used for kingdom work. And so then he began to multiply that. Between that and reading Revelation 7, 9, 10, which is at the front of the Northside Worship Center, that just makes me cry every time I read it, about every tribe, nation, and tongue being around the throne room. I was like, that's my heartbeat. Like, that's exactly what I want to do. And every time I try to do something else, it never works. And so I know this is what the Lord has called me to do. So I'm working with Pioneer Bible Translators now. I'm in the training process, which is super exciting. But when I eventually get to my position, which will be end of December, I will be working as a recruiter, so that every tribe, nation, and tongue has a Bible in their language and has the opportunity to know God.
I can see the fruit and the joy from this, and there's just so much excitement from that.
Pioneer Bible's strategy for missions is to pray. We don't do anything without prayer. We've got a 24/7 prayer team. And so Brian can pray and he can support me, which is super awesome. But I think one of the most heart-touching things to me personally is in the book of Isaiah chapter 11, there's a prophecy. And it says that the knowledge of God will cover the earth as the water covers the sea. And what's incredible about what Pioneer Bible Translators is doing with other organizations, 9 other ones to be exact, is we're partnering together with the goal that in 29 years in our lifetime, that translation projects will be like done. And the knowledge of God will cover the earth as the water covers the sea. And every tribe, nation, and tongue will have an opportunity to come to repentance. I'm so excited to see that activated around the earth and for people to just, everybody to have that opportunity.
Exciting. It was Mike Statura, a pastor in Georgia, said it this way. He said, the mark of a great church is not its seating capacity, but its sending capacity. It's not about how many we can pack into a room. It's about how many we can send out of it. It's mobilized and ready to spread the good news. We're excited to partner with Caitlin and Brian in prayer as they go. We actually have prayer cards in our glow lobby. Ooh, we didn't make one of those. I think that's downstairs somewhere, the glow lobby. But our go lobby has, we have these prayer cards, and you can pick up one of those today and be praying for Brian and Caitlin as they have been mobilized and are ready. It's exciting to see what those 9 organizations joining together. I heard about that just a few months ago where they decided, hey, aren't we all trying to do the same thing? Let's all come together and get this job done. We all have the same goals. Let's translate the Bible for every tribe, tongue, and nation. So we're super excited about that. So we're excited to go with them. So make sure you grab one of those prayer cards and be praying for them as well. We will be a church that lays out the welcome mat, that looks out for the left out and lets our loudest message be the message of Christ. If that describes how you feel this morning and that describes how God is calling you in this way, maybe for you it's time for the very first time to surrender to Him. Maybe you haven't been here for very long and you're like, what's this church really all about? What's going on? Well, this is what we're all about, the mission of God. God has opened a door for you to be here today, and He welcomes you to meet Jesus. I'll be right outside these doors at our decision point lobby. I'd love to talk with you about what that means in your next steps in faith. And maybe for you, it's to take a jump into missions, or it's to take a jump onto a trip or something like that. Maybe you want to make a first-time decision for Jesus, a recommitment, or to make Northside your place, a place that has welcomed you so that you can welcome others. You know, this is also the time in our service where we would like to remind you that if you're planning on giving today, as a part of our community, giving to the mission of Northside, where we're committed to sending and going and welcoming and mobilizing, you can do that online at northsidechristianchurch.net. Just click the giving on the top right there, or you can text your gift amount to 417-233-1200, or you can drop off your paper check or cash in one of the boxes back by any of the exits. We will be a church that lays out the welcome mat, that thinks about the front door, that looks out for the left out, that lets our loudest message be the message of Christ. Let's pray. God, we pray for your strength to truly be committed to those things, to truly be a committed church that cares about the lost, that cares so much about their spiritual needs and their physical needs. And when the nations come to our doorstep, that we fling the door open wide and we let them in and we give them the love and the grace that you have given us. God, as we continue to worship, as we continue to praise you, that your name and your honor and your glory will cover the earth like the waters cover the sea. God, thank you for allowing us to be a part of that. Would we welcome? Would we mobilize? Would we be mobilized? Would it be the most loudest voice out of our hearts? It's the message of your love and grace to the nations. It's in Christ's name we pray.